This Swedish village of Domsten in southern Sweden has been quarantined, with the military blocking every road going in and out of the village.
Thankfully, it's not currently under quarantine, but it has been. And it happened exactly 317 years ago on this date of April 1st.
I'm at the stone here that commemorates this awful anniversary, and it reads Minne över pestens offer I Domsten och gråläge som gravsattes här 1711 till 1713. Translating to remembering the plague victims in Domsten and Gråläge were buried here in 1711 to 1713.
But how had the plague come back to Sweden? It had been hundreds of years since it had killed a third of the population.
And now that we're dealing with this other pandemic, it's time to ask whether this plague will come back again, and whether quarantines are the right solution if it does.
It started here. A man took his boat across to the Danish side, visited his relatives in Denmark, and got the plague and brought it back. But he wasn't supposed to go to Denmark because Denmark had a nationwide quarantine at the time, just as it does now. But it's not hard to imagine why he risked it and went over there. For one, it's very close. It's just a 20-minute ferry ride today and probably a 1-hour boat ride back then with his little boat. And also, he was probably born Danish if he was old enough, because this area had been Danish for centuries and was only became Sweden after Sweden won it in the Scanian War 60 years earlier.
All of the details about the countless wars and battles for this land between Denmark and Sweden over almost 1,000 years will need to wait for another time. Basically, though, Sweden had been an empire for a couple of hundred years and had conquered lots of land around the Baltic, and eventually those neighbors, namely Russia, Poland, Denmark, they all joined together to fight back in the Great Northern War. Sweden's military was decimated by Russia in the Battle of Poltava in Ukraine, and that was basically the end of the Swedish Empire. But although Sweden lost countless territories in the Great Northern War, they did win Skåne in the Battle of Helsingborg, the final battle they needed to fight for Skåne, hopefully. Although the Swedish military was stretched thin during this time, they still thought it necessary to block every road going in and out of this village with their few remaining troops. However, despite this quarantine, the plague managed to spread to Helsingborg, Malmö, and all over southern Sweden, from this fisherman in this village and other sailors returning from the fallen and disease-ridden colonies. Thousands of people died, and there was a real sense of doom and apocalypse during this time, which kind of reminds me a little bit of now. Just like then, Denmark has implemented a nationwide quarantine, meaning that unless you work or live there, you can't travel there. So, not even for a beer. But Sweden still hasn't introduced a quarantine or lockdown, as many other places in the world have, but we'll see in the weeks and months to come whether they do for any particular cities or for the whole country. Would it be the right decision to do so now? Was it the right decision to do so then? Well, it's too early to say for now, and depressingly, it's apparently too early to say for then too. Historians and epidemiologists still debate this question in the context of this village today, and that means there will likely never be a right answer or interpretation that everyone shares. Some say it was ineffective and caused harmful stigmatization, and others say it prevented the disease from spreading further and lasting longer. As for whether or not the plague will come back again, or any of the other historical diseases, well, it's sad to say that they actually never went away. The same plague that has kept re-emerging throughout history still exists in North America, Asia, Africa, and elsewhere. Thankfully, humanity has been able to develop antibiotics to fight these deadly diseases, but if you do a quick search on YouTube in Swedish for pesten i Sverige, or the plague in Sweden, you can find an expert saying
Man kan säga att det är inte frågan om vi får en ny pandemi, utan det är frågan när vi får en ny pandemi.
Or it's not a question of if we'll have another pandemic, but when. Meaning that one of the worst issues we face right now is antibiotic resistance. That this is spreading and will continue to grow and grow, meaning that diseases like the plague will no longer will be treatable, and we're back at square one. So now, while we're still very much aware of this issue, we need to commit to long-term planning and funding for disease prevention and treatment. We got lucky as a species with this one. The mortality rate isn't that high, but who knows about the next one? There have been much worse in the past, and there will certainly be much worse in the future. One clear lesson from this time is that it was the wars, the constant battles, that led to the outbreak of countless diseases. As contaminated water from rotting corpses in the wells and water supply are generally not healthy, just to name one of the many problems that Helsingborg faced after the Battle of Helsingborg. Of course there are still wars, and it's not too hard to imagine much larger ones. But isn't that just so stupid? Don't we want to survive? And don't we want to survive in a non-post-apocalyptic world? I think that should be something we all agree on, right? So let's all work on stopping climate change and developing medicine and healthcare methods, and work on understanding humanity better so that we understand our larger context in this world and why it is that we all should work together. I hope to see you again here on Symbolic Place. It's here that I'm trying to expand the Anglosphere representation of Sweden by interpreting, translating, and explaining Swedish culture, history, and politics. In general, I think the articles about Sweden in English are like this, and the articles about Sweden in Swedish are like this. And I want to do my part to make the English articles about Sweden a little bit bigger. Make this circle, this Anglosphere, a little larger. I want to go through all kinds of sources of information about Sweden and share them here in English to people out there who don't speak Swedish but are interested in Sweden, just like I was growing up. It's been a lifelong journey of mine to understand Sweden and Swedish, and I'm very much happy and grateful that I finally can, and I want to give back to those of you out there who are not yet able to speak Swedish. Of course, Swedish-speaking Swedish people are more than welcome as well. I just want to give you a quick example of this. If you look at Wikipedia and the articles about these topics, you can see that the English submissions are quite short, whereas the same articles about the same topics in Swedish are much longer. And quickly, in terms of promotion, I want to promote my brother's movie called Pester, which is actually not about pesten in Swedish, but it's a movie that is quite interesting if you're looking for something different. So I recommend checking it out on Amazon Prime. And speaking of films, I want to let you know about the next video I'm planning on doing, which is going to be a review of the most famous Swedish film of all time, The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman. It's a film about the plague, and it's truly incredible, so I hope to see you again for that. If you want to leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Alright, take care and stay healthy, my friends. Peace.